Our moderator today for our discussion, since we are moving to a more friendly environment, is Jason Pretty Boy of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. And he will be asking the questions and leading the forum.
I came for a I did not come from Los Angeles to discuss anything. This is not a forum for me. I want you to hear our campaign's ideas and differences. We all agree on some basic things with green. I'm here to discuss ideas, debate ideas.
If you just want to keep the mic, you can start with your opening statement.
Oh, no, sir.
Yes, ma'am. There you go.
Greetings from South Central Los Angeles. I'm the only Black woman seeking the Green Party's nomination as president for a clear reason. By the end of this century, it won't look like y'all. It'll look like me and those sisters over there. So our party, like our nation, does not have a succession plan to ensure, unlike colonialization and imperialism that pulled out of the countries around the world, that administrative, technical, and operational is in place to maintain our society. For 400 years, Black folk, red folks, yellow folks have been oppressed by, what is it called? Ignorance. But in fact, it's racist ideas. When I was at the ANC, I was perplexed. The ANC is annually to talk about things when they presented us as presidential candidates. I got stunned because when I looked around, I didn't see people that hate me. I didn't see ignorant people. I saw people that were European, American, from the 15 tribes of Europe who had racist ideas that they had consumed by people who were producers of ideas. So I had to go home and deconstruct myself because I was racist too. Because I had looked at a group of people who were not what I had perceived them to be. I found this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And I have eaten this book, and I think I've sold 1 million copies, because it clearly says what it takes on a personal level, on a political level, to change ourselves individually and our nation. So my name, Sedinam Kinamo Christian Oyawasife Kare. I was raised Muslim and Christian. My parents were incredible people. I'm one of 26 children, number 16 at the bottom. I'm a 4th generation farmer. So being a green is a natural thing for me because I love what? Soil, animals, plants. What we're going through is building, we need to, I would say our campaign, to build the anti-racist party of America. Because then when we do that, we raise the moral standard for not only ourselves individually, for our nation. We need system change, not a green deal, not a blue deal, but change. And I'll go into that further. I thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm Dennis Lambert. I currently live in Southern Ohio. I've lived most of my life in Appalachia, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Southern Ohio. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. Come from a long line of veterans, people who've served their country and sacrificed not only their bodies and their minds for the principles that we're organized here under, but also for greater causes than themselves. I'm probably the last of my generation that has joined the military. I served 8 years in the Army as a supply specialist. I served primarily in medical units, hence I ended up getting training as a field medic. Two things that disappointed my father: when I turned 18, I registered as a Republican and I joined the military. By the time I was 3 years into my military service, I dropped my registration as a Republican because of Newt Gingrich's contract with America that would essentially create a greater schism in the VA claims processes, and knowing that if the veterans aren't being supported by Republicans, I can't do that. So the last 10 years of my life, I've dedicated the rest of my life and the last 10 years of my life to serving my community. And my community is the world. I do small things in my community to help elevate people, to help them overcome barriers to self-reliance. The last 6 years, I've worked for a nonprofit organization. I helped 30 veterans in 1 month get employment and generated over $25 million worth of wealth for over 1,000 veterans that I helped in 1 year. In addition to that, we provided over 16,000 meals to veterans and hungry families. I am measured and calm because I've had a tempest in my life. I grew up poor, one of 5 kids raised by a single mother whose only possible income was tipped income. So I know about inequality and I know what it's like to struggle. We grew up on food stamps. And growing up on food stamps, you know the pain of that last week of having to decide, well, can we pay the water bill this week or can we let it slide just so we can have some chipped beef on toast for the next day or two? Our favorite meal was peanut butter sandwiches. I see a lot of this coming to, there's no middle class anymore. Honestly, we just have the wealthy and the poor. And a lot more people are going to be suffering through the systemic racism and capitalism punishment of poverty and the system that's set up now where people are punished for not being able to provide bail, or because they have to work, they may forget about a court date. But not only that, but our working people are supporting the government while the rich are enjoying socialism. We need to level the playing field for everybody. My platform, I hope, will make this clear that it is something we can do.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, first of all, I want to acknowledge that we're here on stolen land. I'd like to do that first. This is my first time to Boise, and are we on Shoshone land? Shoshone land, so I want to acknowledge that. So my name is David Rolde. I'm one of the candidates for the Green Party presidential nomination. I live in Massachusetts, and I'm an anti-war activist, a revolutionary communist, anti-imperialist, anti-war activist. And I've been a member of the Green Party since 2003, the Green Party in Massachusetts, the Green Rainbow Party. And I've served on the Green Rainbow Party State Committee since 2003. And for the past couple of years, I'm the secretary of the Greater Boston chapter of the Green Rainbow Party. So one of the big issues that I focus on in my campaign is calling to totally eliminate the U.S. military and weapons industry and getting the Green Party to call for that instead of just cutting it in half. The U.S. military serves absolutely no positive purpose. Everything it does is destructive. So cutting the U.S. military budget by 50% or even 70%, 75% is not enough. That would still leave hundreds of billions of dollars every year budgeted to fund genocide. The world can't survive many more years of the U.S. military wreaking social and environmental destruction. So this year I proposed to my state committee, Green Rainbow Party State Committee, that we take the position of that we want to totally eliminate the U.S. military, and my state committee approved this position recently, and we've sent it on to the GPUS platform committee. So I hope that this proposal will be considered this year. So I'm against all the U.S. imperialist wars. I want to stop them all. I stand with the people of every country who are resisting against U.S. imperialism. And I want to talk a little bit about regime change wars. The U.S. carries out regime change wars by vilifying the popular progressive governments and leaders of countries that the U.S. imperialist, capitalist imperialists want to overthrow. The imperialists falsely accuse the governments of human rights abuses and call their leaders dictators. The regime change wars proceed with economic warfare, sanctions and blockades, and then the U.S. regime covertly sends in armies of mercenaries and sectarian extremists to invade each country targeted for regime change. And my fellow candidates, Dennis Lambert and Howie Hawkins, they have said they're against regime change wars, but they don't seem to understand the concept. Dennis Lambert's told me several times that he thinks sometimes U.S. troops like illegally occupying another country are like serving a positive stabilizing function. And Howie Hawkins has last year sponsored a anti-Syria forum at the Brooklyn Commons, where they had a speaker, Anand Gopal, who works for an organization that's funded with millions of dollars from the State Department and the Gates and Rockefeller foundations. And inside this forum, they were circulating a petition calling for the U.S. regime to continue funding the White Helmets, which is an organization of Al-Qaeda members who make these phony videos accusing the Syrian government of chemical attacks.
30 seconds.
So Trump can shoot missiles at Syria. And also inside this forum, people organized a protest against John Mubarak, who was the Green Party 2016 vice presidential candidate, because John Mubarak opposes the war on Syria. And at a presidential debate we had in Missouri in August,
Howie Hawkins said he supports the anti-China protest in Hong Kong with people waving American and British flags for Hong Kong to be.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
And
David, I'm sorry. I told you I was going to mess up the
name.
name.
You would, so you're keeping your promise. I appreciate
So
it.
thank you very much for that. We'll move to our next candidate to introduce himself.
Good morning, I'm Dario Hunter, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm a member of the Youngstown, Ohio Board of Education. I am a rabbi, I'm a former environmental attorney, I've been a former teacher and an educational administrator. And I come from a family in Newark, New Jersey originally, where I was raised in the projects by a working poor family. And for me, education was my ticket out. And I look around this country today and I see even less hope than I experienced when I was a child, a young African-American child trying to work my way out of the slums. And so the goal of my campaign is hope. I'm not going to swipe at anybody else here tonight. I think we're all here with the best of intentions, and we all need to work together to save this country, to save this planet. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by a targeted plan, such as the one our campaign has under the People of Color Bill of Rights to deal with the racism that's persistent in this country, to deal with access to justice issues, to deal with the educational and environmental racism, to deal with the genocide taking place on our streets on the part of law enforcement. But we're also going to deal with the universal issues such as housing, a universal right to housing, universal right to food, water. These are human rights. We support the Green New Deal, and the Green New Deal has a plan for 100% renewable energy and, of course, millions of jobs to not only stimulate the workforce, but to help save this planet. But we also believe global climate change needs to be addressed globally. So our campaign has the Green Path Forward, which is our effort to engage in more fruitful diplomacy with the countries we have been trained by the powers that be to consider our enemies, but the countries that are also the world's top carbon emitters, and we need to make friends with and have peaceful diplomatic relationships with in order to help save this planet together. Countries such as Russia and China. We believe in single-payer healthcare. No one should have to suffer through poverty and a downturn in health because they don't have the means. We believe in reparations for African Americans, for descendants of slaves brought to this country. We don't just mean a check, we mean a reparative process that heals and empowers communities. And we also believe in indigenous sovereignty in this country. We want an end to corporate personhood. When they say that a corporation is a person, they're not really saying they put them on the same level as you. What they're really saying is that they're more important than you. And their actions show that. We're going to put an end to that. We believe in local community control of education, which is what they tell you you have. But in communities like ours, we're subject to a state takeover where they profit off of the suffering of children who are in our failed educational system. We believe in community control of policing. We believe in revamping policing from the ground up. We're not just going to reform, we're going to tear down and we're going to build it back up so it genuinely serves communities. We are an anti-war campaign. We're going to close all of those bases and we are going to focus on peace and build a Department of Peace. We believe strongly the best defense in this country is a well-educated citizenry and a fair and equal society. To close, the focus of our campaign will be an end to privilege, an end to economic privilege, an end to white supremacist privilege, and we are going to focus our campaign on building a fairer and a greener America for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's good to be in Idaho, and it's good to see a Green Party getting started in Idaho, because we need them all over the country, because the two major parties are not solving the problems that we have to face. My name's Howie Hawkins. I'm from Syracuse, New York. I'm a retired Teamster, and before that, a construction worker, but that was mainly to pay the rent. What I've been doing, my main thing has been being active in movements. Going back to the 1960s, I came up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we had the movement, capital T, capital M, civil rights, anti-war, environment. And I very early concluded that we need an independent party of the working class for democracy, socialism, and ecology. And that had to do with, failing to fight the racism of the Goldwater white backlash and the Democrats seating the Dixiecrats instead of the Freedom Democrats in '64, escalated in Vietnam. And I've been at it ever since for independent politics. I was at the first organizing meeting for a National Green Party in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1984. So now I didn't plan to run for president. I'm retired. I had other things I wanted to do with that little pension I'm getting. But a group of people had a Draft Howie campaign, diverse in terms of race and gender, sexual orientation, age, and geography, from Matt Gonzalez in San Francisco, the almost mayor of San Francisco back in 2003, to the late Bruce Dixon, who they convinced me. And so we're out here, I'm out here as part of a collective leadership representing all of them. And we have two basic purposes in this campaign. First is building the Green Party. This is a tough, scare people stupid. We got to build the Green Party so we can elect thousands of people in the next election cycles, primarily at the local level. So we're about helping all the states get on the ballot. We're about helping the Greens become organizers and not just activists who show up, but we know how to expand the base, particularly among the working class, people of color, and youth. And about building unity within the Greens and on the left. And I'll just say what was said about me. That's on the same par as Hillary Clinton on CNN saying Jill Stein is a Russian asset. Those kind of smears have no place. We need unity in the Greens and we need unity in the broader left. And I'm running on 3 life and death issues that I'm headlining, that we're facing. That's why the Greens got to step up. The climate crisis. And we got a eco-socialist Green New Deal that is about taking over the energy sector, the railroads, and manufacturing so we can build this thing out in 10 years, which the climate science says we need to do. Just like during World War II, the federal government took over a quarter manufacturing capacity in order to turn industry on a dime into the arsenal of democracy to defeat the fascists. We got to do nothing less now. Second crisis, as life and death, is inequality. Inequality kills. It's been growing since the 70s. Neither of the capitalist parties has any idea what to do about that. We have a 20-year life expectancy gap between our richest and poorest counties. So we're proposing that economic Bill of Rights, which has been on the agenda since FDR called for it at the end of World War II. The civil rights movement turned from civil rights to human rights and put it on the agenda at the March on Washington, the Freedom Budget, and the Poor People's Campaign. And then the third issue is the nuclear arms race. We have got out of the treaties. We're escalating. We're modernizing our forces. So what I think the Green Party can do, because nobody in the two major parties are talking about this, we need to demand no first use, unilateral disarmament to a credible minimum deterrent.
30 seconds.
And then negotiate with the nuclear powers that didn't participate in the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons that 122 nations signed on to 2 years ago. And the campaign to get that got the Nobel Peace Prize, and nobody in this country hardly even knows that. So the Green Party needs to bring that issue around those demands. And I hope our congressional candidates, as well as our presidential ticket, and our local candidates will bring that to the fore, because it's a life or death issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Wilson.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, all right. My name is Chad Wilson. I'm obviously running for the nomination of the Green Party for President of the United States. I want to start with a quote from Thomas Paine in Common Sense. It's the introduction. He says, "A long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a superficial appearance of being right and raises at first a formidable outcry in defense of custom. But the tumult soon subsides. Time makes more converts than reason." I wanted to start with that because we have to understand that people are on different timelines in their life at different points. So when we reach people, we have to reach people based upon where they are at in their process and what's going on. So as a party, the unification has to come with saying, okay, what are we building together? What kind of atmosphere, what kind of platform is the Green Party going to be that's going to allow people to come from wherever? Because I see a lot of toxic Greens, bashing, this person's a Republican, this person's this person's that, this person's that, rather than saying, here's a place to have these discussions. Here's a place for us to battle it out. But it seems like there's a lot of people that, of course, they don't want to talk about the internal issues, which is the other part that's keeping the party from growing. We can talk about all this stuff all day about what our platforms are, because, we are running under the 4 pillars. We all share the basic same values, but if we can't collectively build this party and understand what we are representing, then we're wasting our time, because this is opportunity in the first time in history that we can connect like this. Well, that we know of, obviously, but the internet gives us that capability to reach one another, to reach, to organize our resources, which is the biggest thing that I want to do. I want to do a green guarantee, which is a jobs program, which is actually organizing what we already have, because when we have all this reclaimed renewable material, everybody can be housed. Everybody should be able to be fed. Everybody should have the opportunity to live a quality of life. And we have those resources now. We just have to organize them. And the Black Panthers had the plan already. We just need to be able to do the same thing as a party and bring people together. And organize what we have. I want to do a marching band. So anytime there's some sort of event or protest or march, we need musicians, we need people out there creating morale. It's the vibe, it's the energy that we're giving off to people. That's what's so important. You can't tell everything about a person in one sitting, in one conversation. That's why it's important to listen to everyone here. You say what? Is that time?
1 minute.
1 minute. All right. Everybody's voice here is important. And it's something that the Green Party has failed to do, is provide plenty of ample opportunities for all of us to hash out all these things. You got some people believing in Russiagate, believing in Mueller, and then obviously some people are less pro-war. Like, there's a lot of intricate things that we need to be able to show that we can hash this out, but still be on the same team. Hiding and sweeping corruption under the rug in our own party is not making it easier for people to come, because once these Bernie cats and once all these other people get screwed over again by the establishment, they're going to want to go somewhere. And if we're not prepared for that, then we're going to miss another opportunity, have to wait another 4 years, because the president, even though they have the things in position to keep us out, to keep a third party out, it is important for symbolism, because it is the most important election that gets people riled up. I'm Chad Wilson.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schlakman.
Oh, okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, hi, everyone. I'm Ian Schlakman. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I am an anti-imperialist. I'm a anti-colonialist, anti-capitalist. I want to give a hooroo shout-out and also acknowledge that where I am in Baltimore, Maryland, and also where you all are is originally native land that was stolen by the native people. I wish I could give you my full platform today, but unfortunately I cannot. I'm currently involved in a boycott of the National Green Party because 5 of the lovely people that you see here today will disappear off the Green Party's national ballot in next month. I have no idea why the Green Party has chosen to take this course of action. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think we could easily have 7 candidates on the ballot for the Green Party. The Democratic Party has never had a debate with less than 8 people on the stage so far. Earlier this week, they had a debate with 12 people on the stage so far. And guess what? that meant a lot more eyeballs, people tuning in from all different parts of the Democratic spectrum. So why the Green Party National has decided to take this egregious step and kick 5 of us off the ballot, myself included, is disturbing to me. I'm not asking any other candidate or any other person to join me in this boycott. I truly believe in the work of the Green Party. However, I personally feel it's my responsibility to point this out to any new organization that I encounter. And I wish I could tell you more about that today, about my platform, but unfortunately, because of the boycott, all I could speak about is the active boycott that I have on the Green Party. Except for the fact that what Mr. Hawkins said is a complete lie. He's a Russiagator. You can look up on the website, check out Primo.mix interview with him. The way he smeared Jill Stein when he got interviewed with the mic is an abomination. And I don't understand why he's not just sticking by his statements or walking the back or apologizing to Jill Stein. And almost every other candidate here today does not believe in the Russiagate narrative. And almost every candidate here today has signed a joint letter. All the candidates have signed a joint letter, at least at one point, calling for more fairness in the Green Party primary, except for Mr. Hawkins, which is very, very unfortunate. And we hope he reconsiders his position on this. And I do apologize because I understand that you all are a new Green Party out there in Idaho, but it's my responsibility to bring this to attention as many people as possible. So I appreciate you letting me say that today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schlakman. Thank you very much, candidates, for your introductions, for your very short biographies for those of us that aren't familiar with you. At this time, we will move into the questions. Mr. Wilson, Mr. Schlakman, will you be responding to those questions, or is that part of your boycott as well?
I will not be responding to any issue specific. I'm sure other candidates can handle that. If anything pertains to the party infrastructure, I will respond.
Which is an important issue.
Thank you very much. At this time, I will open the question. Basically, 2 to 4 minutes for your answers. Each of you can take the question in turn, or if you feel that you don't need to answer that question or don't have an answer for that question, you're more than welcome to step out of the questioning. If you or you are referred to in that question in the answer period, you will be given a rebuttal time of 2 minutes. The time for the questions, 2 to 4 minutes, 4 minute being the maximum. I will once again tell you at 3 minutes that you have 1 minute left. And then following this, we will have a 3-minute closing where each of you will finally give your final thoughts and opinions and why I believe that the Green Party vote for you. So starting off with the questions. A lot of these questions are going to be very Idaho-centric because you are here with the Idaho Green Party. And so a number of them, again, you may not have an answer for, but, if you take your measure. In Idaho, land and water are king. And we probably know that most of your views on public lands are pretty much the same. You all sit in the same arena with that. In Idaho, though, especially with the advent of our ultra right-wing conservatives, there have been talk to actually take them out of federal purvey. What is your opinion on that? Should they be left in for federal purvey or should they be taken out, and why? And we'll start at the end with Mrs. Moyowazi Curry. Miss. All right, we'll pass the mic.
You say Empress or Queen if you're that
Empress or Queen.
I'm 57, I can pull it. Okay. It is critically important for your state, for our nation, for the planet to save soil. I'm a viticulturalist, I grow grapes. So soil is critical. So instead of land, I say soil because we need soil for everything. Coming here, I've taken almost 300 pictures of trees. Being in California, we don't see the changes. You are blessed and favored with this beautiful earth. So yes, I am totally for land protection, keeping it public, and clearly to not do the fracking. I read something that folks are against fracking, definitely. A few of us attended the mayoral forum on Friday, and this issue came up several times. So yes, it is critically important for soil, land, water, air to be protected and to be saved for the next generation.
Thank you very much, Empress.
Come
on, make it a joke. Sedinam is fine.
You're EQ from now on.
Oh no.
Mr. Lambert, I believe, I also am a farmer. I've grown my own food and produced food to donate to food pantries to give to needy folks, as well as my neighbors, and provide as much as I can for my community with the skills, knowledge, and ability that I have. I believe the earth is sacred and that we should be taking care of it to the utmost degree. I believe that we should, as soon as possible, any federal lands that were seized from natives that are federal parks should be returned to those native tribes. And we can easily do that. I've been advocating for the Shawnee to get land in southern Ohio for the last 15 years that the state has abandoned as useless and worthless, which was actually a settlement for the Shawnee in the 1700s. I believe, as I said, the land is sacred, as is the water. It's where we come from, and if we don't respect where we come from, then we don't have our identities anymore. We need to protect this because our life is tied to the land. Too many people are in urban deserts where they're surrounded by concrete and don't understand how nature works. They don't understand the cycles of the seasons. As somebody who grows their own food and raises their own animals, I have to pay particular attention to when I plant my seeds, when I put them into the ground. A lot of this stuff is because of dramatic climate change, is severely shortening growing seasons. Over 1 million acres in Ohio was not planted this year because of climate change. I myself was not allowed to put my garden in for 3 weeks because of late frosts, and then early frosts this season cut my farming 2 weeks late. So I am well aware of the climate issues. I will be releasing my renewable infrastructure investment program, which will touch on agriculture as well as a lot of these other issues. I'll be releasing that here in the next couple of weeks, and I hope if you go to my website, dlpotus2020.com, and follow my website, a lot of my information is on there. I'm welcoming anybody to submit a question, and I will answer to them with a video response directly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert. Okay, well, the so-called United States is not a legitimate country. It's a illegitimate white settler colony on stolen land, built on genocide and slavery and war and imperial plunder. So I'm for shutting down the United States, like overthrowing the United States, turning over all the land back to indigenous sovereignty and giving, basically all the resources as reparations to the indigenous people and African people who were brought here as slaves, because the United States stole all the resources from these oppressed people. And it's international white nationalist imperialist capitalism that is causing climate change and causing pollution and the poisoning of the land. And in order to fix that and fix the world, we need to turn over all the power to indigenous people and African people, to people who don't have this white colonial imperialist mindset, so that they can come up with the right solutions, not capitalism, that are going to save the world. And a lot of the poisoning of the land comes from the geoengineering and the chemtrails, and from the genetically modified organisms and factory farming and toxic herbicides and pesticides. So those like international companies need to be shut down, and those things need to be banned. Thank you very much.
All right. I believe very strongly
in community buy-in and say-so in regards to the health of land, water, air. And we're talking about which bureau is going to control, which government tier is going to control. The reality is, this is an issue that's close to the health and the welfare of communities, and communities need to have say-so as to their needs. And that, of course, includes indigenous communities. That is a very important part of how we ensure that we make sure there's an equal opportunity for a healthy enjoyment of our environment. We need to protect public lands against exploitation and any plans on the part of the federal government or any tier of government to exploit, including Trump's plans for logging on public lands. I believe strongly in banning logging on public lands. And when we talk about community control, this is very close to home for me, because my community in Youngstown, Ohio, we have a grassroots effort to fight fracking. And one of the ways they've been able to fight the effort to fight fracking is through state preemption, taking the local control out of people's hands and saying, you can't pass a charter amendment in your city saying we ban fracking in this city. This is why we really need to have community control, community buy-in, community boards, and a truly transparent consultation process. Now, I mentioned indigenous people and indigenous people's rights. We have to acknowledge the rapacious effect of aggressive agribusiness in this country and across the world. I'm a strong supporter of organic agriculture. The Green Party is a strong supporter of organic agriculture. I'm a strong supporter of an agricultural industry that is going to be in harmony with the land and people's rights and health. We've seen in the Amazon, for instance, these horrible pictures, horrible videos
of the Amazon. Is not talking about why that's taking place. It's taking place because Bolsonaro let loose the wolves of industry, let loose people who felt like they can do whatever they want for corporate profit in the Amazon, despite the fact that that land belongs to its indigenous peoples. So we have to make sure that we protect the right of communities to have say over the health and welfare of those communities as it relates to land, water, and our natural resources.
Yeah, public land should stay public. They're our common wealth. They're our common inheritance as a humanity. The problem we got to watch out is that the public lands, the regulated, have captured the regulators. So you get these, bad logging programs on national forest land. So you got to improve the regulation of public land. Flying in here, I was watching how these developments are encroaching on the farmland. We need public regulation of private land use. That land wasn't made by no capitalist or nobody. It's our common inheritance. So we need to regulate it, find a common way to regulate it and protect, for example, farmland. And people talk about what we need to do with the farmland. We need to get rid of corporate farming and chemicalized agriculture and subsidize the transition for working farmers to organic agriculture with full parity pricing of all commodities and supply management so that the farmers can make a living income above their cost of production. And so I think we need to not just talk about public lands, we need to talk about all the land. And when we get to treaty rights, Native peoples have not got the land they were promised. I could tell you about New York. I live on Onondaga land, and they didn't want to take people's homes. They just wanted a right to say what was going on with the environmental issues in their former full lands. And the court said, you're too late when they brought their land rights forward. Well, we can change that so we can get these treaties, because the treaties are at the level of the Constitution. And if we don't respect the treaties, we can't even be sure about our constitutional rights in the rest of the Constitution. And there's another set of treaties, well, a particular treaty, the Treaty of Hidalgo, Guadalupe, where Mexican Americans have land that's been taken from them that was given to them in that treaty. That's coming out of the War of 1848. The border got moved on the Mexican and indigenous people. And so recognizing treaty rights and land rights, I think, is part of protecting the land.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Wilson, excuse me.
Yeah, can you guys hear me better now? I know it was cutting up before. Is that better?
Yeah.
I'm absolutely, for public land and private land. Farmers, I work in real estate. I'm a title searcher. So when I've actually been doing a lot of searches on properties that they're subdividing, all these farmlands in the in the country and all these smaller counties. There's plenty of resources. There's plenty of land right now. There's plenty of broken down buildings. There's plenty of ways that we can organize what we have now using the internet, using using the biggest resources, which is the human being, and then of course the internet, where we can connect all these things. Like permaculture is very important. We just have to show how this can be done. Again, having an app to say, okay, you want to buy, from a farm, or you want to rent out a lot, or you want to rent out a room or something. All these different options that you can do. We should be able to organize that through an app, and that's something that the party should be able to facilitate. It's organizing people all across the country to say, hey, you grow this, awesome. I grow this. Let's figure out a way to trade. And I think our biggest thing we can do now is focus on the country, focus on the rural area, and help them organize, help them see that they have these resources, and then create an environment to bring outside culture, bring the city into these country settings, so we can actually have a dialogue, and people can start seeing that these bad policies, this corruption, is affecting all these different identities in a different way. Having your basic things, food, water, clothing, housing, education, and we have in the internet, we can educate people. There's no reason why we can't create a quality life with the resources we have now. So we need to focus on these farmers, actually, and document this land. We need to document all these skill sets, because as technology furthers, in the event some kind of solar flare or, something happen, we need to be prepared. And we have to remember that the establishment is not going to give up their power that easy. So we do need some sort of plan in place when they want to start another war, or they want to, create chaos in order to, again, hold on to their stuff. But digitizing, the lay of the land, mapping out all these things that we have,
1 minute.
gives us a better perspective, a better a macro perspective. And I think that's the key. Then that's something that I would want to do, is actually it would be great if we could get all the candidates to go on the road. I know Sedinam's talking about it, but go on the road and hit these areas and actually go through them and be creative. Say, okay, well, here's how we can do this here. Because Ocean's 11, right? Everybody does their role, their job, in order for the collectiveness. Some people can call that socialism, some people can call that capitalism, but everybody's putting in their piece in order to work together. So that's kind of the idea we need to push and press, and we need to do the same thing with our farming to co-ops.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Moving on to the second question, which sort of takes off of the public lands, private lands question before. In states like South Dakota, people have started to see oil companies mandating laws to allow basically the raping of the land by outlawing protesting. What would you do in your first act as president to stop this? Or do you feel this is something that should happen? Oil companies, the oligarchy being given that kind of power. Start back down again with EQ down there at the end. Pass the microphone down, please. Empress Queen.
No. I want to step back, because I think it's really important. David said some stuff, some other folks said stuff. We have to establish three things. One, we are on stolen land. How come we're on stolen land? In May 4th, 1493, the Pope approved the European monarchs to go and discover the world. So we're environmentalists in the Green Party. So ecological wisdom is what we talk about. So I think it's really important to establish some facts. We're here on someone else's land. We got here because eminent domain and these racist policies. So as Green Party, and again, I push that, we have to become anti-racist. So all of our policies are put in place so that we're the anti-racist party, which abates all this stuff. So we're coming clearly with, we are not racist. We're not racist because these policies set out in the past and present through oil companies, through private individuals, are not in line with the way we exist and want to exist. So I think we have to agree to that. Secondly, profits over humanity is sick. We're going to kill ourselves. Capitalism is barbaric. So no company should have any say over our existence for our species and this planet. So even before taking office as Moyawasipe Curry, we would have stopped that as a Green Party if we are becoming the anti-racist party, because the majority of Americans who don't vote would be with us. They don't want their homes, the water, everything messed up. So we have to get in line with being anti-racist so that oil companies have no place or space to even speak of that abomination of trying to take our space as human beings. We have the ability, if we are open and loving with our 10 key values, to do what I've been saying from the beginning, get together and we all campaign together to bring the 40% of Americans, the largest political party, in line with understanding what's at stake. Climate change, global warming, it's affecting all of us. Beyond our ethnic groups, beyond our class, beyond anything, our sexuality, we all gonna die if we don't get it together. So that's, I wanna just be really clear, because David said some stuff that was on point, but we have to give the background. Green Party is not the anti-racist party. We just talk nice, but in actual fact, we are not being anti-racist.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lambert. That same fiction that created corporations or people is the same one that created people or property. I don't believe that corporations should have any rights above, beyond those people who are existing on the land. A little bit of history, as I said, I grew up in Appalachia. My father, his family migrated from England in the late 1600s as indentured servants. They were eventually freed, but they never got enough wealth to move out of Appalachia. My father and his father were not miners, but they had coal miners in their family. My father was telling me about his Uncle Harold, who was 6'2", and they made him crawl through an 18-inch hole with a bucket, and then 2 cents for every coal that he hauled out of the mountain. Now, when we look at the destructiveness of coal and the coal industry in the 1970s, if you look at the documentary called Hazard County, Kentucky, Hazard County, USA, they discussed how the coal company was blaming black lung on smoking. So now the fracking industry is saying that, well, all these earthquakes that are happening in Youngstown and Oklahoma, that's not related to fracking, even though we didn't have earthquakes in Youngstown or in Oklahoma prior to the introduction of fracking. My renewable infrastructure investment program addresses our dependence upon fossil fuel that is harmful, deadly, and poisonous. In New Jersey, you can't pump your own gas because the state of New Jersey has declared that petrochemicals are too harmful and hazardous for normal people to handle. One of the very few states that will not allow you to pump your own gas. This is definitely a increasing damage to our environment, and we need to move away from that. There's plenty of other sources to generate electricity through renewable means. One example I like to point out is I did research when I ran for office in 2010 along the Ohio River. There are 28 dams. 19 of those dams generate electricity. Only 2 of them generate electricity beyond the locks and dams, and those 2 just generate electricity for the parks that surround the locks and dams. We can easily retrofit a lot of these locks and dams as well as bridges with hydrokinetic turbines as well as solar panels and wind turbines. We're using hydrokinetic. We don't have to worry about battery storage. We have a constant source. As long as the water flows, we will have electricity. We eliminate the need for additional storage. So bottom line, I don't believe that any of us benefit from corporations making determinations on how we use our land and how we use our resources, especially when we don't tax the extraction of those resources from our lands to pay back to the communities that are destroyed. And George Bush Sr. Or Jr. rather, eliminated the Superfund taxing. So we are now in an even worse climate catastrophe in areas where we've allowed corporations to make the laws and rules for what they can and cannot do in property that they so-called own, and then return over to the public with huge, massive amounts of contamination.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert. Mr. Rolde. Okay, well, I agree with everything that said, and Moyo, as you said, Curry said about this, and I want to stress that this has been going back, that European imperialist corporations have been going around the world for 600 years, like stealing resources, like going in and stealing resources from land that belongs to indigenous people. Where I live in Massachusetts in the 17th century, like Massachusetts was part of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, but it was founded by the Massachusetts Bay Company, which was an imperialist corporation. And these like oil companies that are putting pipelines through the Dakotas. I mean, the Rockefellers in the 19th century like set up these oil companies like Standard Oil, and it's just part of this centuries long thing of these European imperialist corporations, and they have no right to steal oil or pipe oil through indigenous land. It's not a question about like the U.S. Constitution and fixing it. The U.S. Constitution was like designed. It's like designed to serve white colonists, like creating a legitimate country. So we need to restore the sovereignty of the land in the Dakotas to our moderators people, and then they need to decide like how they're going to develop their land, and if they want to develop their resources and that pipelines through or not. Probably I don't think they'll want pipelines, but there are resources on their lands that they can develop or not develop, and like sure they will treat things in a sustainable way and be a lot better stewards of the land than the United States and these oil companies have been. Thank you very much, Mr. Rolde.
First and foremost, we need to end the extraction of fossil fuels, period. We need to switch to 100% renewable energy, and we need public ownership of utilities so that we have public community control. Now, regarding the issue of protesting and our First Amendment rights, yes, we need to pass laws to protect and enshrine those rights, but we also need to recognize that we have judges that are bought and sold as well. And case law matters. The lawyer, I can attest to that. So we absolutely need to make sure that we put people in place who are interpreting the laws such that we can protect our First Amendment rights to protest. Your representatives, your elected representatives, be they judges, be they legislators in your state legislature, unfortunately, many of them are owned by corporate interests. They're owned by big oil. And so the big elephant in the room is the democratic deficit. The fact that you are being cheated out of real decision-making in this country. We need to take money out of politics. We need to take corporate control out of politics. And this means we need to end Citizens United corporate personhood. We need proportional representation in this country. We need ranked choice voting. We need open debates, and we need public financing. So the public has a fair choice to get their say genuinely represented. Now in Youngstown, Ohio, which was name checked earlier by my colleague, in my town, we faced an effort to pump massive amounts of money into saying that our effort to ban fracking in the city was a job killer. It was an evil job killer. Glossy mailers went to every single household. There were people who were campaigning at the polls, paid to do so. We were a grassroots effort of neighbors and friends. How do you go up against that? Together, what we're going to do as a party, but also as a movement, is to take that moneyed corporate interests out of politics altogether. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that there's an element to this environmental racism. You have this extraction of resources, many cases taking place on indigenous people's lands, and pipelines going through indigenous people's lands, in effect, without their say-so, taking advantage of their rights, of their lands, and that must stop. Thank you very much, Rabbi. Mr. Hawkins.
It's pretty amazing that we're debating what we're going to do about a law to criminalize protests when we have a First Amendment. It just shows how far corporate authoritarianism has gone and how these corporate interests have bought the government, including the judiciary. So what can the president do? Well, they can appoint an attorney general that's committed to protecting the First Amendment. And I'm sure that, you know, people in the public, nonprofits are going to sue to say these laws are against the First Amendment, and the Department of Justice can weigh in support of those lawsuits. So I think that's one thing the president can do. The other thing is use the platform. They call it the bully pulpit. And, you know, if it was me, I'd go out and protest. I mean, I got a long record of going back to the Clamshell Alliance. We organized, we occupied nuclear power plant sites. Labor Day weekend, I was up in northern Michigan fighting Enbridge Line 5 at the invitation of some Anishinaabe Indians who are leading that fight. Now that I'm retired, I want to get out to North Dakota and South Dakota, XL Keystone Pipeline. That's where this thing is coming from. I've just got off probation for a couple of anti-fracking and anti-fossil fuel infrastructure busts. So if I was president, I mean, I'd probably have to ask a lawyer about this, but my inclination would be to go out there and protest damn Exxon. Watch out, Exxon, I just got off probation. Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Wilson.
Protesting. Well, let's talk about what it exactly that they would be protesting. It's corruption, and it's really censorship of the problem and of the issue. And when there's something going on, and people have the right, First Amendment, to speak up. And I just find it. I find it interesting because the problem is why things don't change is because we do this group think, and people tend to hold their nose for their own team, their own little clan, their own little clique in order to fight the other person. It's like playing the Super Bowl, especially if you have that two-party ideology where you have to pick a side, and you don't believe that a third party is viable. But then you got the third party people, which again they excuse certain behavior in their own party in order to again try and pretend that we have people in our own party pretending that we're viable and they're operating just like the DNC. So the protesting, what I would do, first is educating people on what's going on. Follow the money, show how people are using these resources, why they're doing it. And that's something that we don't even have the discussion on here. Because when you're censoring people, like I've been censored on the Green Party main page. People are censoring me from sharing content. And I don't have co-chairs and committee members doing a draft chat and using their resources to make sure that I become the nominee and organizing around the Green Party in order to not have to involve everybody else in. So when we're protesting, how can we do that? It's being creative. There's another thing too, and I mean it is kind of the question itself. If we're not in the office, there's a lot of ways we can be creative too, and framing is that. If you notice that when they were in DAPL, the time where they actually halted it was when the veterans came out. So these people they co-opt organizations. They do a lot of black exploitation. They use those in order to keep their power base because it's their money and reputation. So when the vets came out, started marching, and that started to get picked up, that's when they came in and halted it, and that's how they do it. That's how they co-opt things. So we have to be clear in understanding that when we're making moves, that the cultural, we have to understand the cultural well, not price tag, the what certain cultures can bring, because right now we have to understand how they exploit, like again, the black community, and the value of the black culture is so high. If the black community understood the power of this, there could be a lot more things. Just like all these other identities, as a collective, we can stamp out all the way that they use these identity politics. So protesting is important, but we have to be very clear and understand what it is we're protesting and why it's important, and that allows other people to engage with you rather than it just being about one thing. We have to understand what people are protesting. It's the corruption, it's the censorship, and we don't have any right or any high ground to even protest outside of the party when we have censorship going on in the party and we have corruption going on in the party, when we have people using the party's resources to push money and energy and things the direction that they want them to go. So censorship, silencing people that speak up, that's a big key issue. You know, I'm on it with the party. Like, we have to fix it with the party. Nobody's going to believe that we're what we say we are until we show that we don't put up with that here. It's kind of ridiculous to pretend we're a grassroots party when you have co-chairs and committee members cheating to make certain people the nominee, using the resources, going around the making things official Green Party events so they can pay privately to people.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. At this time, Ms. Mawasifa Sifa Curry had a rebuttal towards your use of Black culture.
All right.
You have 2 minutes.
The most educated group of Americans look like me. We're the most degreed group in this nation. But how come I'm the only one running? I'm not the only Black woman that's bad, sharp, smart. I'm not. But it's patriotism, it's sexism, and white privilege that exists within our party. This book, raising it up. If our party being anti-racist, we would have the floodgates of folks of color and progressive European Americans who understand the importance of being anti-racist. And I'm going to make it real clear. You're anti-racist or you're not. It ain't going. I'm calling everybody a racist who's not anti-racist. Chad made 3 very good points, but I'm going to stick to the Black stuff. There's an agenda. It's called the National Black Political Agenda for Self-Determination. We know what we want. We don't ask nobody. We don't need nobody to tell us what we can and can't do. We got it. We got a 19-point plan that our campaign 5 colors. Step up and run for governor and senator. Let's change this by flipping this male switch off and flip it on a sister of color. It's really that simple. You all are nice people, but you don't need to be running. Get women up here. Come on, sisters. Come on. Get women. Let's stop this crap. None of these brothers, love 4 of them, need to be up here. I'm glad they're here, and I want us to all go on campaign, but we need to flip the switch on male. Done. Y'all mean did it right for how many years? Let's just stop and say it, women. We need women. What we need to say? We need women. So I'm now calling y'all out. I think I've had 3 people run for governor since I've been here. You have a governorship coming up. Come on, run, women. They ain't that smart. Come on, they ain't fixed it.
30
Let's
seconds.
fix it.
Oh.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. At the
Go ahead.
time, I'm sorry, Mr. You
Was
have
it-
a 1 minute rebuttal.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely, but I think it needs to be talked about white folk white boys that understand what's going on because we want to help. And sometimes, depending on where someone else is, there's a hard line of discussion to have because some people feel like you're exploiting the thing as a white person trying to speak up on black issues. And then of course sometimes people want white people to speak up on issues. So there is a little bit of confusion. And I think that's what's so important to have the discussion. And we have to realize too that inside our culture, sometimes we have blind spots and things that we don't recognize, and that people outside can see it. That's why the black community can see, all the little details that the white people miss. You know what I mean? And the same thing, because we get caught up on cultural things, but we need to talk about them and not feel threatened. So I'm agreeing, but adding to what you were saying.
Thank you very much. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will move towards your final statements to end at our preferred ending time. You each have 3 minutes. That is it.
I'm against the Green New Deal. I want to talk about ecological wisdom and system change. This ain't no debate. No, I can't hear debate.
Well, if you can get them to argue with you during your final statement.
I think Howie and Dario, you all are off base with Green New Deal. Number one, we need a system change. Capitalism, you say that, nice socialist is barbaric. And I'm saying you are agreeing to capitalism when you want a deal and not a change. So I'm calling Dario and Howie's Green New Deal dead on arrival. Debate me and I can handle it. Ecological wisdom is system change. If you look at the models of economics, one is corporate, one is natural. And what you're talking about is illogically crazy and unnatural and unsustainable. You can make $60 in America, but if your rent is $2,000, you still broke. I'm calling out the Green New Deal as capitalism.
I call my Green New Deal the eco-socialist Green New Deal for a reason. We are taking over under public ownership and democratic administration, the energy sector, the railroads. We got to build bullet trains, rebuild the trolleys, the light rails in the cities, as well as electrify freight. It's done under the public sector, as well as manufacturing, like we did during World War II, because, all these democratic proposals, which isn't through the public sector, except for Bernie Sanders on the energy. All those proposals are all about subsidies and incentives and regulations. And, the Koch brothers and Exxon are not going to just take that line down. They're not going to take their fossil fuel profits and put them into renewables. We got to take them over. Now that's system change. No doubt about it. Well, I contend that it is. Social ownership and democratic administration of major means of production is a socialist system. It needs to be eco-socialist because we need to produce our basic needs within ecological limits. That's different than capitalism. All it cares about is profit. So I beg to differ.
Ma'am, you have a minute rebuttal if you would. Thank you.
Evolutionary human form. Still, there's no infrastructure to what they're talking about. Let's be clear. You are still within this U.S. capitalist nature. If you don't change the system of capitalism, you are participating in it. As I'm saying to both of you all, if you're not anti-racist, and that means policies, institutions in place to stop being racist. For example, our campaign has set up the Shirley Chisholm Political Leadership Institute for training. The reason how come folk of color, Black women not up here, they've not been recruited, trained, and supported the same way Green New Deal. There's no structure in place in a capitalist system to do what you're doing. It's nice words. It's nice, but it ain't no system.
Rabbi, you have your 2 minutes. Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to say that we're not going to solve the planet's seriously pressing problems, including racism, including man-made climate change, unless we learn how to work together. And that's why, while I support the Green New Deal, I also do believe the Green New Deal is not enough, and we need additional measures. That's why our campaign has advanced the green path forward, because we do need to work with other nations, put aside the bigotry, put aside the racism, put aside all the barriers that the capitalist overlords in this country have convinced you need to be in place, and work together with people as brothers, as sisters, as human beings. We recognize that what's happening today is that China, Russia, these are countries that have the top carbon output, and we are not engaging in fruitful diplomacy with them at this time. And in many ways, the West has outsourced its carbon output to China through manufacturing. And so when we talk about 100% renewable energy in the Green New Deal, what's happening between California and New Jersey, we're not solving the planetary problem. We need to learn how to work together. As far as addressing issues of racism, as a son of an Iranian immigrant, as an African-American man, as someone who is a representative of a community that has been racially disenfranchised through educational racism, through environmental racism, this is something that is very close to home to me. That's why our campaign has the People of Color Bill of Rights, so we can tackle issues like access to justice, to deal with the broken justice system, the school to prison pipeline, which feeds people into the new slavery, mass incarceration. We need to tackle these issues. We need to deal with issues of native sovereignty. We need to deal with issues of the predatory banking and lending industry, the redlining that goes on in this country still to this day in over 60 metro urban areas. We need to deal with this on a comprehensive scale, not just in terms of the racism and our environmental issue with climate change, but also what's happening in the everyday racism in America's community. So our campaign has the targeted solutions to deal with this. We are providing the answers, and we're doing it without attacking or getting involved in any kind of ad hominem, because we want to work together with everyone. Time. Thank you very much. Ma'am, 1 minute rebuttal to that as well.
Joseph, did I outreach to you?
Yes.
Did I push you past yourself?
Yes.
Okay, let's just get real frank here. We're a small party with big ideas, but unless you talk to each other, I set up campaign meetings, right? Brother never even showed up on one meeting. Howie did, I give you that credit. So talk is nice, but when you don't put in the structure, for example, we all show up to each state, go to 5 places, and push our ideas, have discussion and dialogues, brings people in. But when you're excluding folks, how do you get privilege to be at events you're not invited to? Come on, let's just stop the crap. That's crap. And Dario, I'm gonna say it out loud. You ain't showed up to one meeting where we put together, and how we did, I give him that. So talk is cheap. Action speak louder than words.
Thank you very much. In less than 15 seconds. Stop the negativity. Let's work together. I'm not going to participate in anything that's about dividing anyone. We all need to work together. And I'd appreciate it if we could respect people's holding the floor. Work together and let's resolve the problems in this country together. It isn't about any one human being. It isn't about Dario Hunter.
I want to speak
to. It isn't
to.
about my sister who I respect. We have to solve the world's problems by working together. If we're engaging in negativity, you are excluding people through the negativity, not the other way around. And people have a right to not want to buy into things that are divisive rather than being united. So I had an event yesterday with my brother here, Mr. Hawkins, who I agree with on a lot of things. But we talked about solutions.
I want to speak.
Even though we disagree, we have.
Let me listen. Anybody who says that talking about the issues in the party is divisive is culpable of being part of the problem. You cannot censor people from having these issues, telling, oh, we're divisive, oh, you're attacking. No, actually, we're speaking, we're criticizing the very reason why people aren't flocking to the party. The first time in history, everybody are so engaged, and then you got Howie and his camp cheating. They literally said, we're going to do a plan, we're going to pick a candidate, and we're going to use all our resources in order to do that. Don't tell me people are being divisive when we're trying to actually add integrity into the party, actually be inclusive, actually discuss the conversation that these other parties aren't. I'm tired of being talked down to. Tell me to do this. Well, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing? People are being assholes to people. People are being assholes to people. Talking down to people when people are trying to help. Criticizing someone for what their actions are is not the same thing as attacking or being divisive. You have to care about the party. And if you don't care about the cheating of what's going on in Hawkins' campaign, then you don't actually care about growing the party.
30 seconds.
So, we're all adults here. We are all adults here. If an adult invites you to a meeting and you choose not to be there, you're not being negative. I've said very clearly, Howie has showed up to every meeting. I don't agree with him, but I respect him showing up with only presidential candidates so you can hear. We can decide. Ian didn't show up, nor did Dario. That's immaturity for me. And we have an agenda. Everybody can impact the agenda. So negativity, no. I'm just tired of the crap. And you all, we grown people. And if you choose not to come on, don't call me negative, because I'm inviting you. All this extra work is being done by me. The PCSC are the people who are supposed to coordinate us. I'm the PCSC because every time anybody needs everybody's number, who sent it to them? 20 times I have copied and pasted and sent everybody's information to anybody who wants to interview us. So let's be clear. I'm like the co-chair. Our campaign has been since February, getting people involved and figuring out what we can all agree on. I send that to everybody. So the most positive person in this campaign is me, because I don't want anybody excluded or anyone's idea. But I am never again not going to call people out. Dario and Ian ain't showed up to no meetings. Howie's campaign has had privilege, white male privilege of being invited, where other of us have been excluded. Howie, will you stop doing that? Yes or no? Ian and Dario, will you show up to meetings? Yes or no?
You can rebut if you would like.
It's a question. We grown.
Do they say amen in the synagogue? Because that's what I felt like saying earlier. Look, I'm being asked to stop being invited. In other words, I'm being asked to stop.
Stop letting your campaign cheat. Stop cheating. Stop cheating. Asking to stop cheating. Speak out.
You acknowledge that you have been privileged to do stuff where I've not been invited.
Campaign chairs, committee members, you have been using the system.
I have the floor right now. I would please ask that the moderator actually prevent other people from speaking over people, because last time I spent most of my time trying to argue with someone while it's supposed to be my time on the floor. So I'm just going to, as a professional request. My response is very simple. As I mentioned earlier, we need to keep this positive. We need to work on solutions. My community doesn't want to hear about these particular internecine warfare issues going on in the Green Party. They want to hear about how they're going to deal with workers' rights, because we got people who are striking in Lordstown and Youngstown. They want to hear about how we're going to deal with the educational racism that the children in a failed school district their state Youngstown are dealing with. They want to hear about how they can stop fracking in their backyard. And we need to talk about solutions. If we're going to have a debate, let's have a debate about those things. Let's have a debate about how we're going to save this country from the many ways in which they've been cheated out of its rights. Let's have a debate about how we're going to save this planet together. But we're not going to have self-absorbed control of the agenda by certain people who just want to take things over and make it all about themselves when we have a whole planet full of people to save together. Either you want to hold hands and save this planet together, or you want us all sink fighting each other. It's not about egos. It's not about individuals. It's about a planet full of problems. Put aside all our differences and get over ourselves.
Can I respond to that, please? Can I respond, please? Let me respond to that, because obviously he went that over and over and over. Listen, man, people have an issue. What's up? Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Wilson.
Say what?
You have a closing statement that you can use your time to respond to anybody that you would like.
Gotcha.
You have a 3-minute
Understood.
statement. Use that. At this time, I would
like
to go back to Ms. Mawasifa Curry to finish her closing statement. She still has 2 minutes left.
Thank you.
As much as I appreciate all of you being passionate about it, Any more and we're done.
Got you.
Okay.
No, we got you. Let's be real clear. I'm asking questions. I'm a Black woman who's been discriminated against. I can't pretend that it started. I've been discriminated against, but it hasn't stopped me from showing up. Being Black and being proud of who I am means I have to stand up and speak the truth. I represent 600 years of Black folks in this nation. So this question are questions that Black folk go ask me. This, as I've shared to you, unless we're anti-racist, you're racist. And I'm gonna start saying that. The second is 19 points of Black self-determination. That's our campaign. The second thing is I'm asking 45 women of color, sister friends, to run for office, governor, as well as senator. Those are listed in our campaign. Let's just be real. We're human. Humans have vulnerability. But in a democracy, this is about structure and it's about follow through. And we've not experienced that. I'm gonna say it again. I've been discriminated against, but I'm saying it out loud. We've put out 2, 3 statements. We've done enough. Now it's time to call people out. It's not personal, it's political. It is political. I am a 4th generation Black farmer who cares about the soil. I joined this party knowing I had to help end white privilege. I know that. So be uncomfortable with me. We've all been racist. I've had to go through a deconstruction process myself. I've been connected to the nation of Ghana for 31 years. Only 6 weeks ago, I stopped saying developing country. I'm asking each of you to challenge yourselves. And I'm gonna repeat myself. I'm asking a question, Howie, no one's asking you to not run, to stop, not do what you're doing. We're asking you to stop allowing discrimination to happen against women of color and other candidates. Dario and Ian, I'm asking you to show up to a meeting. This is not an attack, it's a question. Much love and peace from South Central LA.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lambert, 3 minutes.
Besides Ms. Moyofisi Curry, I'm the only candidate who's actually called the Green Party out for racism and white supremacy and asked that they adopt immediately a platform on the nation and state platforms, a anti-racism, anti-white supremacy program, as well as a purge of all white supremacists and racists from government agencies, because we don't need our tax dollars supporting hatred. There's a lot of stuff going on. I too have been excluded from a number of different things. I have reached out to a lot of the state parties and gotten no response about attending events. Joe, I love you, brother. You invited me back in May, and I said, well, I wanted to go to Idaho because I want to help these guys that are starting out the party. This is why I'm running, because I'm not really somebody who should be running. I come from a poor family. You know, I'm unemployed. I'm running to try to get other people to run for office. That's the only reason why I'm running. I know I'm not delusional. I'm crazy, but I'm not delusional enough to think that I'm going to win the election. But I know from my previous experiences running for office that I can influence the major parties. I believe that we can do that. And I have mentioned this a number of times, and I've joined Sedinam on a number of instances, saying that every person of color needs to join the Green Party and take it over. Old white go on in a party that's supposed to support grassroots democracy and equality. That's not equality. I believe that we should be going forward. We need to build our party, and that's the only way we're going to succeed. There's already over 60% of the voters are not registered with the Democrats or Republicans. How many are registered with Greens? Probably about 3%. Why aren't we going after that other 60%? Why aren't we going after Republicans and Democrats who are sick of the issues that they're going back and forth? Because it's just a fight for power. I'm against having decentralized power, and the example of our prejudice against us, that's also a Green Party platform. One of the 10 key values is decentralization and having the party determine who is going to be the nominee before we even get to cast the first ballot 4 months before the first primary, to just exclude 5 people who have spent their own money and raised money from other people to campaign is not decentralization. It's not democracy. It's not green.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert. Mr. Rolde, 3 minutes. Okay, well, I've been calling the whole time to shut down the United States and for us to have decolonization, reparations, and self-determination for Africans, indigenous people, and all oppressed people. So I've been trying to push the Green Party to oppose white power as well. The issue of the Hawkins campaign, like being run by party insiders who use their positions to try to exclude the other candidates, is a real issue. Like the Utah Green Party next month is not going to allow me and a couple other candidates to have 5 minutes at their convention because the person who's running their semi-annual meeting, because the person, Brendan, who's in the room, who is running this meeting, is like works for the Hawkins campaign and is trying to exclude us. So they're using arbitrary criteria to exclude us. And I don't want to talk about the Green Party primary process of the debates. I want to talk about the issues, but they're forcing me to talk about this. And I say revolution, not New Deal. I mean, when the people who talk, the Green Party people who talk about the Green New Deal, they do talk about a lot of good ideas. But the phrase New Deal is a Democrat Party phrase, like Franklin Roosevelt, like trying to stop a communist revolution because the Soviet Union was really big at that time in the 30s. So in order to save capitalism, they offered like some crumbs to white people in the United States, not even to black people, and that didn't even work because they had to have a world war to get themselves out of the depression. And so New Deal is a Democrat slogan, and so it's really easy for the Democrats to reappropriate Green New Deal. And then we have this like foundation-funded climate strike, global climate strike thing, and everybody running global climate strike supports the Democrat Party funding Green New Deal, which doesn't have any change. And it's really difficult for us to go there and say our Green New Deal is different because, I mean, they're using the same word. So it was really poor term for the Green Party to use the term Green New Deal. We need a revolution, not a New Deal. And how much more time do I have? 30 seconds. Okay. So I want to also say that for Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. We must stop all funding to the Zionist entity. The so-called Israel is an illegitimate white settler colony on stolen land, just like the United States is, and it needs to be shut down. And I want to say I also support 9/11 truth. The 9/11 attacks in New York City were and the Pentagon were falsified, perpetrated by people close to the Zionist and U.S. regime. Muslims and Arabs had nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks, and we need to stop using that. Thank you very much. As excuse for wars against Muslims and Arabs. Rabbi? The focus of my campaign is mindfully acquiring the privilege we experience in this country. And we need to recognize that while we're unpacking this privilege and we're engaging in attacks to bring the power back to the people, the privilege has layers. It isn't lost on me that there is a national disgrace in this country. Not as a national disgrace, it loomed particularly large in my mind as I'm in this region. And I'm bringing up this issue for a reason. In regards to the status of indigenous peoples in this country, 27% are in poverty, 69% unemployment persists in the Blackfoot sovereign nation. 3 of the 5 poorest counties are sued. Poorest counties in the nation. 45% of indigenous women experience physical abuse, and the Department of Justice report indicates that 80% of that physical abuse is rapes by non-Native Americans. The dropout rate is twice the national average. 90,000, over 90,000 underhoused, without home. The healthcare disparity is stark and severely underfunded. And that's not even mentioning the exploitation of resources on native lands, the barriers put in place to vote, the limited financial resources in native communities. Why am I mentioning this? This is one amongst many lenses through which we can view the severe inequalities in this country. It is unconscionable, it is a human rights abuse, and under an eco-socialist government, it will not exist because we will empower communities.
We will give ownership over all of the means of human fulfillment as well as planetary fulfillment so we can heal this planet. And we will empower minority communities and indigenous peoples to have say and control over their own affairs within the context of their own cultures with respect for their own cultures. We've laid out a very ambitious platform, an ambitious platform for access to justice, for a right to housing, right to education, right to water, to clean air, clean soil, 100% renewable energy in this country so that we can share a clean planet. But until we unpack the many layers of privilege, and yes, I am a part of that, even though I'm an openly gay African-American man, I'm the son of an immigrant, I'm also a man, and that's privilege. I am cisgender, and that's privilege. We need to unpack all those layers of privilege, and we need an eco-socialist government where we can share alike and hold hands as a people together to solve these problems, which we will only solve by acknowledging those problems together. I thank you for your time. I encourage you to visit dariohunter.com to learn more about the campaign. Please also sign the sign-up sheet at that table in the back. And of course, I wish money was out of politics, but unfortunately it isn't. So I also encourage you to please contribute if you think this campaign, which seeks to bring the voices of the voiceless to the masses, deserves to have a platform. Please assist with that. Thank you so much.
Mr. Hawkins, 3 minutes.
We only scratched the surface in terms of issues that could have been discussed. I mean, we really only got 3 or 4, I think. So I'm going to be around till 6 if people want to ask me questions about different issues. I'll be around. I think I'll take a couple minutes to talk about, an issue we've been talking about is racism in this country. How do we, what I would want to say is the way we get rid of white supremacy, black power, black people, brown power, brown people, like the Panthers used to say, right through the Rainbow. The Rainbow Coalition, Fred Hampton came up with that term. What does that mean practically? Well, we implement a Green New Deal. We go around the mayors and the governors in allocating the reconstruction funds for this new economy, go right down to the neighborhood level where people are. We got to talk about community control for the police, the schools, the housing, and the businesses. Because the problem with racism, there are people with wrong attitudes, and that changes slowly, but we can get rid of the living, breathing racists in position of power that serves the gatekeepers, the employers that discriminate. The damn real estate industry discriminates right and left. The country's more segregated than it was a century ago. The police, the lawyers, and the judges. All these gatekeepers. If oppressed communities have control of their own communities and the resources in them, then the racists got to go, they don't have no power over them. You got, racism is prejudice plus power. Let's take the power from the racists. So we can talk more about that. And I'll be around, and I got a sign-up sheet. If you want to hear what my campaign is doing, get on there and we'll be sending you regular emails. And of course, we'll ask you for money. I got the donate points too. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ron.
Mr. Wilson, 3 minutes.
Yes. All this is not going to happen unless we actually effectively break up the two-party system, which means a third party has to come in and show that a third voice, an outside voice of that two-party structure is actually able to move this Overton window, to rock the establishment. That's why people think, the problem is people think, they're people against corruption. That's what they're against. And I don't agree with saying, everybody come to the party for this reason, for our grassroots, our 4 pillars, and then saying when you come here, if we're acting out and not following those, quiet, because that's internal politics, and people don't want to hear that. Actually, I think people want to hear that party actually has these discussions, actually says, wait a second, hey, you are shaming somebody for them not doing something that you're doing. When people come in, we need to give them the opportunity to say how they can help. Where do you see that we can change? How can we help you? How do you feel? Because everybody fell victim to the propaganda. We have to explain to them and make sure, the people that aren't already with us, how that propaganda has affected that output, all these boilerplate wedge issues that we keep talking about. Now, as long as Howie and the little toxic crew keep cheating, And now that Dario's on board, he was very open and very against what they were doing before, but now that he's on the inside club, he's very silent. Let's not talk about the issue, because unless we get the party ready for the general, all this talk about what we're going to do if we get into thing means nothing. We have to be honest about how we represent ourselves. We have to be honest about what kind of behavior is pushing people away. The toxic people, we have to talk about that. And if we don't, all this identity politics and everything that you've done and every religion that you're with, okay, I'm tired of I want religion and state to be separate, to actually be separate. And I don't want any more lawyers, and I don't want any career candidates. I'm sorry. I want to talk real shit, and I want to make some things move. Have these real discussions rather than playing high school politics. Let's be cool. Chad Wilson. You can go at Chad Wilson 2020. Listen, I want to break up the two-party system. I'm tired of that. And there's a way that we can leverage the third-party vote. We can tell the Bernie and said, hey, you want to make sure that the Bernie supporters, you want to make sure that Bernie gets the nomination? Make sure that we get on every ballot, so we put that pressure on. You could even go to Trumpsters. We need to give up the Clintons. We need to give up Obama. We need to ask for Epstein's names. What kind of fucking party are we if we're not talking about the shit that matters, that affects the world? Hello? This is the opportunity, 2020. We have the internet. We can connect. We have all these different voices, but we can't hide them and say, let's not talk about things that are actually preventing change. You're preventing change now. I'm not. I'm talking about the toxic behavior. I'm sorry. I'm actually fixing the party, not, joining every other party and coming along when someone asks me to join, or, how many people that drafted Howie are on your payroll now? Tell me that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Time. Mr. Schlakman.
Can I get a closing statement? Yes.
Ian.
I am. I'd like to have a closing statement.
Go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank David, Chad, and Dennis in particular for making sure I could be here today. I definitely want to thank Joe Evans. Is Joe the moderator? Because I can't see him.
Jason Pretty Boy is the moderator. I'm just running.
Oh, great. Well, I really want to thank the moderator, Jason Pretty Boy, because I know that was an easy thing to moderate, and I think you did a fantastic job, and I appreciate that, Jason. My hat's off to you. So I just, I am not going to talk about my platform, but I do just want to slip in that racism, as other people have talked about, is an enormous problem in this country, and I think you see no further than the El Paso shooting, where a young white man literally said he's going down to the border to shoot brown people because he felt they were invading his country. And the answer to racism is revolutionary socialism and a human rights-based economic system, which I wish I could talk about, but unfortunately, because of my boycott, I cannot. So I think this is a little more relevant to what we've heard here today. We fellow candidates, except for one, Mr. Hawkins, have written 3 letters to the Presidential Campaign Support Committee, which if you all join the Green Party, you will be a part of, and you can add people to the board of. And those letters have basically gone unresponded. And we kind of saw this coming, the Green Party primary was not being handled well. It was not being regulated well. There's an effort now to get 5 of the candidates that you see here today out. So it's just 2 candidates. And I think what's not being said is that the Green Party convention is actually not until July in Detroit. So I don't understand why just 2 candidates will be debating for months and months and months on end. It's going to get a little boring, I think, with just 2 candidates. I'd like to see more unity in the party. And I blame the situation that we're in today with so much crossfighting and bitterness on the fact that the Presidential Campaign Support Committee has simply ignored our letters, has not done our job. I appreciate all those who are trying to form their own committees and get on the same page with other candidates. But I think for me personally, I'm calling for a boycott because I think the Presidential Campaign Support Committee can do a lot better than this, and it would lead to more harmony and unity in the party, where there's clearly enough time for every candidate to get their position out, and at the end, every candidate can cheer when the final nominee is chosen. not be bitter and anger towards each other. So, you know, if you all are considering joining the party, if you're members already, please consider talking to the Presidential Campaign Support Committee. We don't need more bitterness and divisiveness in the party. I completely agree. But these things need to be addressed immediately, or that's what's going to happen. You're going to see a lot of people exiting the party because they're not going to stand by the toxicity. Just the other day, a Green Party co-chair who clearly supports Mr. Hawkins was angrily lying and attacking me over and over and over again for speaking out on this. And really, it's the fellow candidates who drafted most of the letters out there, not myself. So with that, I'll leave you all to it. And I hope that you hope this has been enlightening for everyone.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for all of your time, for coming out and listening for the debate. I will give you one tidbit of mine. I once had to moderate a debate between Max Baucus and Mrs. Shirley Chisholm. So you guys, while I like listening to you argue and things like that, you're still. All right, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for letting me moderate this show. Thank you so much for what you've done.
Thank you for coming, Jason.
And again, they will be available for the rest of the day. I believe most of you will be available for the rest of the day. So you can come and talk to them if you have more questions about what's going on.